about the grades. So that's changed in me. So I'm aimless, I'm wandering, right? And the other thing I wonder, does anyone else maybe relate to that? Wandering, aimless. Anyone feel bored, right? Anyone feel like they're waiting, but they're waiting and they don't know why they're waiting, but they feel that they're like, I'm waiting and I just got this pent up energy and I need to do something, but I don't know what to do and where to go. And that's where I was. I was going to work and coming home and going to work and coming home, and I'm telling my wife, like, I feel bored and I need to do something. I don't know what to do. Anyone else maybe feel comfortable on easy street? No worries. You're just like, I got it good. Bills are paid. Kids are out of the house. They all believe in Jesus. I'm good. Like, I did my job. Now I'm just going to put my feet up and I'm just going to watch and not do anything. And I'll tell my old war stories of the things I did in the past. And I'm going to live off of that juice. I'm not going to make anything new, right? Maybe you're just comfortable. Maybe some of you don't feel ready. Maybe you don't feel worthy. Maybe you feel weighed down by burdens, sin in your life. You feel like you just got too much and you don't know what to do to get rid of it. And maybe this is the four-letter word of Christianity, is busy. You're too busy. And we'll read about some people that have been too busy for their adventure. So the call of God, the opened hand of invitation for 2025, is that hand of adventure. And I picture it like Aladdin, right? Which is like, I think for a grown man, this movie, I think I could watch Aladdin without children and still get away with it without being weird. I think Aladdin holds up. Right? There we go. Right? It's about a dude. He's going to go get the girl. He's going to beat the bad guys. It's a good story. But he's got that moment right on the magic carpet when he's holding his hand out to Jasmine. He's like, take my hand. Let's go on a magic carpet ride and I'll show you a whole new world. Right? But she's scared. It's the same way we are. Right? We are the same way with God. He's got the open hand of invitation and he's saying, come on with me. And you're like, whoa, but that's a magic carpet. That's kind of like weird, Am I really going to do this and give up I've got my castle and my tiger, and I got all my stuff and I'm going to give up all that to go with this kid who's not even really rich. He's just got a genie. And what if all of his magic runs out and he's poor again? And then the magic carpet leaves because he's poor, and then I'm poor with him, and I lost my dad and my kingdom and my tiger, right? So she's got a lot to give up, and he's saying, come with me, right? So that's the hand of God to all of us for 2025, the adventure. And so the adventure may last a month. It may last 10 years. I don't know. But this is the thing. So I was talking to Jason about this, and I looked it up. It's Sisyphus. That was his name, which sounds wrong, but it's Sisyphus. So there's the Greek immortal, right, the character of Sisyphus. And he's pushing a rock up a hill, and he gets to the top of the hill, and then the rock rolls back down, and he goes back down, and he pushes the rock up again. And you're like, wow, that would suck, right? But no, that's actually the call for all of us. Every time you reach the end of your adventure with God, whether it's a month, a year, 10 years, I don't know what it might be. But when you get to the crest and you get to the top, you don't just stop there and marvel at what you've done, because that's where you become bored and wandering without aim, and you become self-indulgent, and you become living off the old story, the old war stories, right? And you stop doing things meaningful, and that is not the call of God for our life. We're made in the image of our Maker. We are made to make things. Thank you. Right? So just as the character of Sisyphus in Greek mythology is pushing the rock up a hill, when you get to the top of the hill, you go, okay, God, what next? Is there another mountain for me to overcome? All right, so we're going to start in Genesis 11. And so picture with me. So again, this is a thought and process. So as I go through this, I want to show you my notes for today. Thank God for my wife, because she told me at least I needed to have some kind of an outline. It's just my crazy ramblings of reading the word and jotting down notes. I had no structure until I told my wife everything I wanted to teach on, and then she was like, yeah, but what does it all mean? And I was like, great question. So then I had to write it down. So anyways, we're going to start in Genesis 11, and picture this with me, right? So the Bible is like a cave, and you get to go in this cave, and you get to explore. And so we've got our chisel and our hammer, and you could even have a flashlight, right? And we're going to go in the cave, and we're going to be in Genesis, and we're going to start chiseling around. We're going to take some rock off. We're going to be like, wow, that's really cool. Save that for later, right? And then we're going to tunnel over to Luke for a little bit, and you're like, wait a second, Heath, how do you get to thousands of years later from this cave here in Genesis? That's the beauty of the Word of God. It's all Jesus. the whole way. So we're in Genesis. We're going to tunnel over to Luke. We're going to dip into Acts for a little bit. Double entendre, not Acts, but like the book of Acts, right? We'll spend some time in Acts, just a second, and then I didn't get fully into Matthew. We'll see if we get to Matthew. But so we're going to start in Genesis. And actually, I read from my King James Version in first service, and while I love King James Version, I realize it's not the easiest read in public. So we're going to go for my phone with New King James. So Genesis 11, we're going to start in verse 31, but I'm going to give some backstory, and then I'll get there. So prior to 31, where we start reading about Abram at the time and his father Terah, the immediate context of what precedes verse 31 is the fall of the Tower of Babel, right? So then we see that God confuses the languages of man, and they begin to separate and form their tribes and form their separate communities based on their common language, okay? And so, but what you have in this civilization that was at the Tower of Babel were all of the descendants of Noah and his sons. So you've got the sons of Japheth, which I think were the Japhethites. I don't know how to say their name. You've got the sons of Shem, which were the Semites, and you've got the sons of Ham, which were the Hamites. And so they're all living in Babel, speaking one language, and then God, again, separates them. And so then they form their separate tribes, okay? And so that's what immediately precedes this, okay? And so now you've got Abram's family, which Abram was a Semite. He was a descendant of Shem, living in a region called in Chaldea, which is present-day southern Iraq. And it was called Chaldea because of the marshy land it was in. It was like a low land that he settled in, or his family settled in, and that's where he was living at the time that our story begins. So I'm going to read through 31 to 11:31, and then we're going to stop at 12:6. And that is as far as I got with this, and the many hours that I spent researching and preparing and diving into my cave with my chisel and picking and going, God, what have you got to show me? And why does it matter? And what is it? And the why, the big why. We're going to ask why a lot. And that was also where my wife comes to me in 3 hours after I've been studying, and she's like, so how far have you gotten? I was like, I'm on 12:6. And she's like, you want to do all of Abraham? I was like, well, I wanted to, but not anymore. I can't now. It's like way too much. So we got to 12:6. So that's what we're going to read there. So 11:31. So, and Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran. His son Haran had died in and so Lot is his grandson. And so he takes Abram, his grandson Lot, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there. And so the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. 12:1. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you. I will curse him who curses you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Verse 4, so Abram departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took Sarai his wife, Lot his brother's son, his nephew, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran, and they departed to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were in the land. Okay, so we're going to cover that. So let's go back to 11:31. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot and the son of Haran and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went with them from of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan. So I'm reading this, and my first question is, why Canaan? Why go to Canaan? Why was Canaan the promised land? Why was it called Canaan, actually, was my first question. And so if you'll remember with me, Noah and his sons have gotten off the ark, right? So Noah's got 3 sons, Japheth, Shem, and Ham. Ham is the youngest. We know this. It's mentioned in the Bible. Ham is the youngest. Shem and Japheth. It's believed that Shem is number 2 and Japheth is the oldest, but it's not really clear and it doesn't really matter. I like to think Shem is the middle son because I'm the middle son and Shem is the one who got the seed of Abram. So I like to think that, that's the middle son got the best stuff. Right? But so we've got Ham. And if you remember, they come off of the boat, and God blesses Noah and his sons. He says, be fruitful, multiply the earth, right? And they do that, and they start having children. And then Noah plants a grape patch, also known as a vineyard, right? So Noah plants a vineyard. And so I tend to think he accidentally made wine. Whether he did on purpose or not, I don't think it matters. I like to think it was an accident, because he's like growing these grapes. He's like, this is cool, and then he makes juice, and then he ferments it, gets drunk off it accidentally, and then blacks out. Right? And then who stumbles upon him first? Ham. Ham comes through the tent, finds his father laying naked, and then he's like, oh no, I should cover my father. No, he doesn't do that. He goes, I got to tell my brothers. Let me go get my brothers. You won't believe this, right? And so this is the crazy part. Again, so I'm doing all these things. I've got my chisel and my hammer and my axe, and I'm going through this cave, and I'm like, well, why did Ham come through first? And then the promised land is the land of Canaan. So Ham's descendant, Canaan, that was Ham's son, is going to inhabit what would eventually be the promised land, the land of fertility for the Hebrew nation, Israelite nation. Was Ham supposed to receive that blessing? And being unaware of the potential call of God on his life, being sucked into his own self-indulgent thoughts of what do I want, and maybe even possibly being bitter with his father for some reason, being self-righteous in his own regard, finds his father naked, and instead of covering him, wants to expose and embarrass his father. And then what do his brothers do? They come in and they go, oh my gosh, dad's naked. No, they get the blanket and they walk backward and they cover their father so they don't see his nakedness. Right? So Noah wakes up, he finds out what's happened, and he curses Ham. subdue the Canaanites and the land of Canaan. In fact, the word Canaan in Hebrew came to mean subdue, humble, or to be weighed down. So that was what it meant. And so it's like, okay, so they're going to go to Canaan. I know why they're going in so many different ways. This makes sense now. Okay, so they're going to leave. Let's go back to Genesis 11. See how quickly I can get there. I'm obviously cheating. I have my phone. We're still in verse 31. And so they are going to leave the Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan, and they come to Haran and they dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and he died in Haran. And so then I go, okay, why did they stop in Haran? Where is Haran on the route? What does it represent? What is important, and why is it mentioned? So what I learned, right, is, again, Chaldea was southern Iraq, and then the promised land of Canaan was a northeast, straight, you go straight route. But there's this a desert wasteland in the middle that they in the kingdom of God. So Jesus replies to him and he tells a story. He says, a certain man gave a great supper and invited many. And his servant at supper time said to those who were invited, come, for all things are now ready. But they all with one accord, those who were invited, began to make an excuse. And the first says to him, I bought a piece of ground and I must go see it. Please excuse me. Right? And the other says, I've bought 5 yoke of oxen and I have to go test them. Please excuse me. And another says, I have married a wife and therefore I cannot come. So we've got there through verse 20, we've got 3 pretty reasonable excuses, right? Like I think those guys, if I had a dinner and someone had just gotten married and they were going on their honeymoon, I'd be like, all right, cool, I get it, right? But with the adventure and the call of God, the timing is never perfect for us. The timing is his perfect timing. And the call is always now when he calls. And the timing is always right. It's our choice. And we'll talk about that here in a second, what that choice means. So the servant came and reported these things to his master. And the master of the house, being angry, said to his servant, go out quickly into the streets and the lanes and bring in the poor and the maimed and the lame and the blind. And the servant said, Master, it is done as you command, and there's still more room. And the master said to the servant, go out into the highways and hedges, compel them to come, in that my house may be filled. For I say to you that none of the men who were invited shall taste my supper. So here's the thing. When you have the call of God, like this morning, and we're talking about adventure, and we're talking about 2025, and we're talking about your opportunity to grab onto a word and chase after something with God. And we'll talk about how you identify that here in a second. But you've got this opportunity in front of you, and you have every good excuse there could be. And the only person, just as Abram suffered when he delayed. He suffered when he told someone else about the call, right? Invite someone else to the dinner. I can't make it. Send someone else in my place. The call is for you, and the only one who suffers is you. And what you might even do is withhold some blessing from somebody else. And I'm not saying this to be condemning. I'm saying this to be encouraging, and maybe, just maybe, to light a little fire under your butt, to be willing to make the next step, which we're going to read about. So verse 26, we're just going to skip ahead. So we read through verse 24. So verse 26, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and his mother and his wife and his children, brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Does that sound a little familiar? Genesis 12:1, leave your father's house, leave your country, leave your family, and go to the land that I show you. It's Jesus talking in Genesis 12:1. Right, we know it says in John 1 in the Gospels that Jesus is the Word of God. The Word was with God. The Word is God. All things came through the Word of God. So we know Jesus is talking in Genesis 12 to Abram, and he's talking again to all of us here in Luke. And he's saying, if you want to go on an adventure with me, you've got to be willing to give it all up, whatever I ask of you. And so here's the thing. Whenever you're going to go on an adventure with God, there is a requisite sacrifice. You have to give something up. You don't get to take everything with you. There are things you need to take with you, and I'll say it this way. Anything that is not a requisite sacrifice that you are entrusted with has to go with you. So when Abram was called to give all that up, he didn't have to give up his wealth, right? It wasn't sell all your, so this is the thing. Jesus tells the rich young ruler, right? This is another story in the Gospels. Rich young ruler comes to Jesus. He says, Master, what must I do to follow you? And he says, have you kept all of Moses' law, which is the 10 Commandments, and it's the Old Testament instructions, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, right? He says, yes, I've kept them all. And he says, great, now sell all your stuff and follow me. And give your wealth to the poor. And he couldn't do it. Right? So the requisite sacrifice is not the same for everybody in every situation. So I'll tell you, this year for me, and there was a point in time this year, it was only a few months ago that this happened to me. I found that I was becoming impatient with my children. I got 4 kids, right? Like, again, we might make an excuse and go, hey, Heath, I get it, man. You got 4 kids. It's okay to be impatient. It happens to everybody, right? That is a totally reasonable worldly excuse, but it's not a godly excuse. So I'm becoming impatient with my children, which is reflecting poorly on me, my image to God, to them, right, as the father of the house. And then it could be creating bitterness with them toward me and maybe even toward Father God. And so I'm feeling bad about this. It hits me one day after yelling at my 14-year-old, which it's like, again, I could make every excuse, but I yelled at him and it was not necessary. And afterward, I'm just going, oh man, why do I pop off on him like that? Like So then I got to go talk to him after, and I can apologize every time, but it's like what I tell my kids too. Like if someone keeps punching you in the chest and they go, I'm really sorry, like eventually you're going to try to like guard yourself, right? You're not going to keep letting them punch you in the chest, even though they say sorry. So I'm standing by my staircase, and I'm about to walk up the stairs, and I'm just like, there's that old worship song, like the change my heart, oh God, make me more like you. And so that song comes in my mind and in my heart, and I'm like, change my heart, oh God, make me more like you. So I've got an invitation to adventure with God, to change my heart and become more patient. But I have to make the requisite sacrifice. So I have to give up my pride, number one, especially with my 14-year-old, right? Any man that is grown now, right? We know at a certain point you kind of start testing the male figures in your life because you're like, I'm grown now. I'll do my own thing. And so the other men in life, it sometimes is our job to help them understand their place, but there's a right way to do it. And I was exceedingly crossing the line with my son and being too overbearing and being too impatient. And so I'm praying, God, change my heart. So I have to give up my pride. I have to give up my control of the situation and trust that God knows what he's doing with my son more so than I do. And those are just, again, I could probably go on and on examples. But again, so something as simple as change my heart, oh God, I want patience with my children, needs a requisite sacrifice. And so we go now back to the scripture where he says, you have to hate your own life, and whoever does not bear their cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Verse 28, we're in Luke 15, verse 28. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it? Lest after he's laid the foundation and he's not able to finish it, all who see it begin to mock him. Verse 30, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king going to make a war against another king does not sit down first and consider whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? Or else, while the other is still a great way off, he can send a delegation and ask for conditions of peace. So likewise, whoever of you does not forsake all that he has cannot become my disciple. So counting the cost. I want patience with my children. Maybe you want breakthrough in your life in some particular area. Maybe you're struggling with self-indulgence. Maybe you're struggling with pride and ego. That's a big one. Everybody has a whole lot of that, whether you think so or not. There is a requisite sacrifice. Maybe you're going, I want to be a better witness at my workplace. What do you have to give up to be a better witness at your workplace? Maybe you got to stop the gossip chain. Maybe you have to be more patient with your boss. Right? Maybe you got to be more patient with that annoying coworker that won't shut up when you're trying to count. Right? Maybe you need to be more open about your faith and be willing to be mocked. Right? There's a lot, right? That again is a laying down of your pride. It's a sacrifice of pride. So with every adventure begins the requisite sacrifice. So we're going to zip on back to Genesis 12. All right. And this is the cool parts when you go on that adventure with him. So after he tells him what he needs to sacrifice, he says, I will make you a great nation. I will bless you if you go on this adventure with me. If you become my disciple. I will make your name great. And this is my favorite part. You shall be a blessing to others. Who doesn't want to be a blessing to others? Who doesn't want to be able to impart love and patience and kindness, financial security, gifts of the Spirit, healing? Right, as Jesus tells us, right, he's the water that doesn't run dry, quenches our thirst for life. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. So this is Jesus talking to Abram. And in Luke, well, let me just make sure I'm not getting too far ahead of my notes here. As I was saying, so like this is like the scribblings of my notes. So there's some organization, but there's also not organization. All right. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's go to Luke 5. We're going to zip back to Luke 5. We might land the plane here, or we'll go to Matthew for a second, but we're going to go to Luke 5. We're going to start at verse 1. So Jesus has been baptized, he has gone through the desert, and he has begun his ministry. And so this is as he's calling his first disciples. Luke 5, verse 1. So it was, as the multitude pressed about him to hear the word of God, that he stood by, I want to say it was the Sea of Galilee, Lake Gennesaret. I think there's another name for it. He stood by the Lake of Gennesaret and saw 2 boats standing by the lake. And the fishermen had gone from there, and they were washing their nets. And so he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's. And you wonder, did he do it on purpose? I believe yes. And asked him to put out a little from the land, and he sat down and he taught the multitudes from the boat. So again, I've got my axe. I'm in this cave, which is called Luke, and I'm like, why was he teaching by the sea or the lake? Why did he get into the boat? Like, why did the boat matter? Like, why does it mention the boat? And why does it mention that he pushed out from the shore? Because he could have sat on the boat on the shore, and basically, because some people would say that it was like a pulpit because he was elevated, right? He's in a boat. But he pushes out away from the shoreline. So in the Bible, when you go through Old Testament, New Testament, water has a deep meaning. And our God, and we talked about this in first service, our God is the God of order and chaos. He controls both. And both have a place and a time. Both are necessary. So it tells us in Genesis 1 that the Spirit of God is hovering over the waters of the deep. And then he speaks light. And so what that's teaching us is that God, the deep, the waters of the deep, always, anytime you read it in the Bible, in literary, historical literature, and even now in our time, it just, for humans, when we look at the deepness of the water, if you've ever been on a deep sea fishing, or you've been on a cruise, or if you were in the Navy and you were out in the deep water, there's a mystery to it. There's a chaotic nature to it. There's a fear and anxiety to it. There's an actual phobia of the deep ocean that exists. And so the Spirit of God is hovering over the deep waters because he is the God of the deep. And then he speaks light because he has dominion over all. And so Jesus is demonstrating his dominion because he gets on the boat and he pushes out. And so now there's water between him and those that are listening as he's teaching. And he's demonstrating that he is the voice from Genesis is the same voice speaking to them now. That's demonstrating his authority over the chaos that they're experiencing, over the fear that they have. And the other thing, too, is the water barrier between them. We see throughout the Old Testament, there is a symbolism with water barriers that anytime there's the Israelites come across, like they're going to cross the Red Sea when they're fleeing the Egyptians, right? There's a water barrier, the Red Sea, and God separates the barrier when we are pursuing him correctly. Okay, so Jesus is teaching from over the sea, over the water, and he's in the boat. He's demonstrating his authority, and he's speaking light. And so then, when he's done speaking, he turns to Simon, and he says the same thing he tells Abraham. He says, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. And so there's a saying that I learned in this from Latin, and I was joking with Ron, if he's still here, and we were talking about looking stuff up on YouTube. I looked it up on YouTube because I wanted to say it correctly. So there's a saying in Latin that I've come to love now after doing this. It's duc in altum, and it means into the deep. So Jesus is telling Simon, go out into the deep water and let's catch some fish, right? And so for Simon, his first answer is to protest. This is in verse 5. He says, Master, we've toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. But before he lets down the net, his first response is to protest, because likely he's counting the cost. He's going, my wife's going to yell at me when I get home. I'm missing out on hanging out with my family. I'm already tired, so I got to expend more energy. It's going to cost resources to go out there. There's wear and tear on my ship. We may not catch anything, right? Because as a fisherman, they're entrepreneurs in this day and age. They're all self-employed. And so Simon is used to taking risk at this point in his life. And so he's counting the cost. And it's like, okay, well, this man who just spoke light to all of us, like I guarantee you, Simon, he knows. He's already calling him master, right? He's knowing in this point that Jesus is a rabbi, right? He's a master, a teacher of the word. And so he's recognizing that. And he's like, because you asked, I will do it, but I don't want to do it, right? Going into the deep. And so this is the beautiful part. When they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their net was breaking. And so they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. And this is the beauty of it all, right? So Jesus tells Abram in Genesis 12, leave your family, leave everything you know, push off from the shore, go into the deep waters, follow me, and I will make you a blessing to all. So Jesus now tells Simon, push off the shore, go into the deep, catch some fish. And what does Simon do? They're filling their net, and I assure you at some point Simon's like, I got a lot of fish. I could call it. I'm done. Like, I could go home with this, and my wife's going to be like, woo, we're going to pay all the bills. All right, right? Like, and he can tell his story. There was this guy, and he told me to do this, and we did it. Like, you won't believe it. It was crazy, right? He's already got an awesome story. But I'm reminded, there's one of my favorite shows that I used to watch. It's called Parks and Rec. Anybody watch Parks and Rec? Remember Ron? What was Ron's last name? It's Ron Swanson. So there's a character, Ron Swanson, in the show, and he's kind of like I don't know, like he's a pretty plain guy, loves steak. So in one of the episodes, they go to a particular town that has his favorite steak restaurant, and he's all excited, and he has like a special bib and like a special thing that he wears, and he's got these plans, and the steak restaurant is closed. So he's all sad and downtrodden, and he's crying and he's pouting, and his friends take him to the next best thing for Ron, which is a diner where he can get bacon and eggs. And so he tells the young guy working behind the counter, he's like, give me all of the bacon and eggs that you have. And he goes, all right. And he goes, no, listen to me, son. I think what you heard was, give me a lot of bacon and eggs. What I said was, give me all of the bacon and eggs that you have. So this is Simon going, I'm going to get every single fish. And he's like, my net's breaking. So he's like, guys, come over here and get some fish for your families. So Simon goes into the deep, catches a big haul, recruits more workers for the call, right? Because now he's multiplying the call, right? He's in proper alignment with the call of God. He's pushed out in the deep. He's taken the risk. He's made the requisite sacrifice. And now he gets to be a blessing to others. And he says, guys, come over here. Share in the blessing. Share in the work. Share in the glory. And they catch a bunch of fish. And after that, immediately Jesus tells them, hey, don't worry about any more fish because I'm going to make you guys catchers of men. Because I guarantee you, Jesus is sitting back there and he's going, this is the guy I'm going to build my church on. This is the rock. This is Simon Peter, right? And Simon doesn't even know it at the time, right? And the crazy thing is, just like Abram goes from Abram to Abraham, Simon goes from Simon to Peter. Because he answered the call and he aligned himself properly. He didn't hold it so tight. When Jesus like put the net down here, like I'm sure they were going for a while. He's like, put it here? He's like, no. Put it here? No. And I guarantee you Simon's like, well, I know this is a good spot. I fish this all the time. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's, they're rowing their boat out into the water. But he's got no control. He's following the call of God on his life. And they catch the fish. And it becomes a blessing to others. And I guarantee you, if Jesus said, push out in the deep and make a catch, and Simon was like, no, I got to go home to my wife. I just bought some land that I got to go check out, and we got some ox we got to check out. Jesus would have said, that's cool. I'll get someone else to go catch some fish with me. So this is the thing again for all of us, is the call of God on your life is always available right now. And you can choose to go, what do I have to give up, God? What are you asking from me to go on this? And it may be some stuff that you are going to have a hard time giving up. Here's the thing. Abraham loved his family. He didn't want to leave them. I guarantee you, if God was like, Abraham, sell all your stuff and take your family and go to Canaan, he'd have been like, peace, easy, doing it. Don't care about my stuff. But God was like, leave your reputation, leave the gods of your father that you grew up. I don't know if Abram worshipped idols, but that he was in the house, right? He grew up with his father. Leave your family, who I know you love. He takes Lot with him, which we find out later was not maybe not the best choice, right? But so in the same way for us, The things you have to give up to go on the adventure with God are always going to be hard. The timing is never going to be perfect for you. It's God's timing. So let's land the plane here. I told Sean, have you done this? I'm just kidding. We talked about it, but we always know it's God's decision. But I think we're at a good place. Okay, so we're going to summarize. So here's the themes that we get from this, right? We've gone from Genesis 11:31 to Genesis 12:6. And here is our theme of adventure. Here is our bullet points that we can internalize, that as you begin 2025, you can know, as you're grabbing hold of this adventure, that you're going in the right place. You've got some concepts that will let you know you're doing the right thing, okay? So again, the call of God is for you, right? You can take some people with you, but you can't follow someone else on your call. You can't be like, I'm being called to be a witness to my community. Let me tell the other guy in my community who's way more holy than I am and knows way more about the Bible than I do, he should start a Bible study group in my community and he'll lead it and I'll go. That's not how that works. The call is for you if that's your call. Don't delay. The only thing you're doing is punishing yourself and withholding blessing from others, right? If Simon was like, okay, Jesus, we'll do the thing, but first I got to go tell my wife and then I'll come back. And if Jesus had been like, that's cool, I'll wait. Who knows? He might have been like, no, don't worry about it. Just go take care of your family. I'll find someone else. Maybe these other guys will do it, right? Don't delay and don't settle. Don't become complacent at the first opportunity for self-indulgence. The temptations of Jesus, again, the first one is the bread, the substance, the fat and happy. The second one was reputation. I will make you ruler of all these things. I'll make you a celebrity. I'll make you popular. I'll make you famous. I'll make you successful in business. I'll make you a great athlete. Those things may be the call of God for your life, but you'll know because you're going to be aligning yourself with him and putting him first in everything you do. And if you're going along this pursuit of something that is going to boost your reputation, and we'll talk about how you know here in a second, but don't settle. Adventure requires sacrifice every time. Don't be like Ham, who comes upon your first opportunity for adventure and just blows it, right? God is a God of reconciliation. He will renew you, but you might miss something awesome, okay? And you may have a chance to be invited to another dinner, right? Just as those in the parable Jesus tells, he says they'll never eat at his supper. But you may be invited to another dinner, but who knows when, and you're the only one missing out on all the good food. Right? You're the one suffering. The timing of the call is never convenient. The devil will always have counterfeit temptations and counterfeit opposition to what God is calling you to. You don't get to control what happens. The proper pursuit of God's call is one of honesty, humility, and a willing heart, not trying to control or orchestrate what God is doing and does. The glory is his and only his. So if things go well, don't go build an altar to yourself. And the last one is Duke and Altum. You have to push away from the shore. You have to push into the deep. You don't get to play by the shoreline where the water is easy and warm and get to pursue the call of God. You have to be willing to count the cost, make the requisite sacrifice, and take the risk. It is risky pursuing the call of God on your life. Pursuing the adventure with him that would be a blessing to others. It is doggone risky, and you will make mistakes. If we continued through Genesis reading about Abram, we would learn about all the mistakes he made along the way. So just know that God knows you will make mistakes, and even in your mistakes, he reconciles and he perfects. Take the risk, be a blessing, share the blessing. And this is how you know when you're pursuing the call of God on your life that you are going in the right direction. I'm going to close with this and we're going to pray. Our God is a God of multiplication. Abram didn't go, I got all so the requisite sacrifice, leave your family, leave your father, leave your country. Okay, check. I got all this stuff. It'd be sure easy to go light. Hey, Dad, his brother didn't come with him, right? I forget his other brother's name. Anyways, he had another brother. He didn't come with him. he's like, hey guys, take care of my stuff. I'm going to take my wife with me. Or maybe he doesn't take his wife, I don't know. But he goes, take care of all my stuff and my people. I'm going to go to Canaan, and then when I'm all settled down, I'll come back and get them. You don't get to ditch the responsibilities that God has entrusted you with and then take on the new responsibility that he's multiplying you into. You don't just get to ditch it. Again, you make the requisite sacrifice, whatever that thing may be, but all of your other responsibilities that God has entrusted to you come with you. Our God is a God of multiplication. We saw that Abraham's influence increased. We saw that his wealth increased. We saw that his reputation increased. His family increased. When he left, he didn't have an heir to his life, all the things he had acquired. God gave him not only one heir, but two on accident, error, right, maybe? So our God is a God of multiplication. We learn this in Matthew, and this is where we'll just take our axe and we'll just swipe at Matthew from the cave we're in, right? So in Matthew, we hear the parable of the talents, right? You've got the one servant who doesn't sow the talent. And the master comes back and he casts him out. And he says, and Jesus tells everyone this, he says, to those who have much, more will be given, and to those who have little, everything will be taken. That when God entrusts you with something, he's a God of multiplication. If you find you start getting, he's not division, so it's not like things start getting halved from you, right? But if you find things start getting subtracted from you, your first response needs to be align yourself with the call of God. We learn this in Job. So Job, we find a man who's following God, and things start getting subtracted from him. And what does he do? Strips his clothes, gets before God and says, God, what am I doing wrong? He may have been doing nothing wrong. It appears in Job he wasn't doing anything wrong. But he aligned himself with God. He sought the will of God, and he said, what am I doing wrong? And we find that God multiplied him yet again. Okay? So when you're going on this adventure with God in 2025, and maybe for years to come, it could be a month again, it could be 10 years, I don't know. But you'll know you're going on the right way when things start multiplying in your life. And if things start subtracting, seek counsel, seek wisdom, align yourself with God. Okay, don't build an altar to yourself. So let's all stand. I don't know if we have a worship leader that can play, or we get some music on here. Can I get the prayer team, some of the prayer team up front here? So we're going to pray for a few things. The first is, and I'd like to just invite, why don't we have, if you would like, I'd like everyone to come up front. If you'd like to come up front, I'd like everyone just to come stand in front. We're going to pray together. I'm going to pray over these things, and then if you'd like specific prayer, you're already up here, easy enough. If you're comfortable coming up front, everyone come up front. We're just going to stand right here in front of the chairs. So as you're coming, we're going to talk about this. So the things we're going to pray for, those 4 things I listed. If you feel like you haven't been going after your call, you've passed it to someone else, you've delayed or you've settled. If you feel that you haven't made the requisite sacrifice and you want to, we want to pray for you. If you feel like maybe you have a spirit of control and you have a hard time letting go and let God have control of what he's calling you to do, we want to pray for you. And if you are afraid of pushing offshore and going into the deep and taking that risk, we want to pray for you. And then we're going to pray for healing. If anyone has any illness, any health issues that we need to pray for, we'll do that. And we'll pray a prayer of salvation together. So I'm going to pray the prayer of salvation if everyone will repeat after me, and then I want you just to have access to prayer as you need it when we're up front here. So everyone close your eyes and repeat after me. Father God, we thank you that you love us and you came to this world as the perfect sacrifice in exchange for our terrible sin. We thank you for your grace, that it covers us and perfects us in your sight. We seek you this now and forever. Thank you for your forgiveness. Amen. So we've got prayer up here. Again, I would love to pray for people that need prayer for their call. If you're feeling like you don't know what to sacrifice, maybe you got a spirit of control, or if you're afraid to push into the deep, they're up here to pray for you. Everyone else, you're dismissed.